everyone, let's look real quick at how to study for the final exam. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and take us to week 16 of our class, right? Week 16 is our review week. And you'll see here at final exam Q&A discussion board and our final exam review folder. So let's talk about the Q&A discussion board real quick. It's a great place to ask review questions of each other and of me. I'll be coming and checking in on it and making sure that questions get answered. You can also, of course, email me or come to my office hours to ask me questions directly. What's great about this is it's collaborative. You can ask each other questions and you can answer each other's questions, which can help you learn as well. You can also, if you want, set up times to talk to each other off Blackboard and make study groups. It's entirely up to you. If that is something that you think would be helpful, you can set up study groups there. Now let's look at the exam review materials. In this exam review folder, we have information on how to take the exam online. I just click on that real quick. You'll see it brings up this detailed information sheet with screenshots of how to navigate Blackboard and take the exam on Blackboard. It also has information in there and here about the timing of the exam. The exam can be taken anytime during the official exam week. And once you start it, you have the official exam time of 2 hours to finish it. Now, because Blackboard is a little clunkier than taking things in person, I have given you a 20-minute grace period as well. So you have the official 2 hours plus a 20-minute grace period. So once you start the exam, anytime during exam week, you must finish it in 2 hours and 20 minutes or it will automatically submit. So what is actually on the exam? Well, you can find that out on the study guide. Let's look at that real quick. So the study guide has some information about what you should study, what topics will be covered, and the format of the test. Let's just go through that format real quick. There's 36 multiple choice questions, 2 extra credits, that's 38 total. There are 16 true false questions plus 2 extra credits, so that's 18 total. Another 10 plus 1 extra credit on the fill in the blank section that Blackboard calls matching. That is those 11 questions total. And then there are 8 potpourri questions. Remember, those are the ones where any question style is fair game. Now, this all adds up to 96 possible points with the extra credit questions out of 90 points. So when I calculate your grade, it will be divided by 90, not by 100. You'll notice here that I have these little notes next to each section. This test is cumulative. It means anything we've talked about this semester is fair game, but it is heavily focused on material we studied since the midterm. In fact, the multiple choice section and the fill in the blank section only cover material that we've looked at since the midterm. The other two, the true false, true false, and potpourri will cover anything we've talked about anytime this semester, but of course that does mean stuff we've talked about after the midterm. So you'll see then that 2 sections are only stuff we've talked about since the midterm, and 2 sections have some stuff we've talked about since the midterm. So these are heavily weighted towards post-midterm materials. But again, anything is fair game on those 2 sections. In addition, the 2 sections that say only material covered since the midterm, that doesn't mean that big overarching concepts are not fair game on those. So for example, the collective action problems we studied them throughout the semester. So the prisoner's dilemma is something we talked about in the context of the American Revolution, but we also talked about in the context of policymaking. For example, international climate change policy as a prisoner's dilemma. So you can see that that concept came up after the midterm. So it is fair game on these non-cumulative fill in the blank and multiple choice sections. So again, the test is cumulative, but there's a strong emphasis on the material after the midterm and on applying these overarching concepts to materials that we talked about after the midterm. Now, one tip I wanted to give you for studying is to use this word bank, right? We know that the word list here All the words on the matching or fill in the blank section on the test, that section 3, all the words in that word bank will come from this list. So if you can define these words, you're going to be in great shape going into that. Now, I'm not giving you the definitions, so how do you define them? Well, a great thing to do is to use our textbook, right? Our American government textbook. So if you go to the book online, you'll see right at the top, there's this search feature. Let's say you want to look up the term right here at the top of the list, framing. Let's search for it, framing. It gives us a definition right here. It's a key term, so it's in their glossary, gives us the definition of the term. It also gives us the context that the term is used in. So this doesn't look quite right. Since the framing of the US, it's probably not what we mean by framing. But we know that framing has to do with public opinion and the media. So the media socializes audience through framing, choosing the way the information is presented. One of the ways, presumably, the media can do something is through framing, the creation of a narrative or context for a news story. So we can then click on any of these that we want to learn more. So let's say we want to learn one of the ways is through framing. One of the ways, what? One of the ways, so in the end, consensus among observers is that media has some effect, even if it is subtle. This raises the question of how the media, even general newscasts, can affect citizens. One way is through framing, by creating this narrative or context for a news story, right? So we can read more and learn more. Then once you feel comfortable, you understand the term, you can go and try to define it in your own words. I'd even challenge you to use it in a sentence. So write a sentence rather than just a definition, a sentence that uses the word. And what's really helpful about this is that not only will these words show up on potentially in that word bank, but they're also going to show up on other questions. So for example, we have sample questions or practice questions, I should say, on this review sheet. And you'll notice the first question on the review sheet actually uses the word framing. It's using it in a slightly different way. It's talking about pollsters framing. But if you understand that when the media frames something, they're basically giving you a context for the story. So for pollsters, framing is going to mean the context in which the question is asked, right? And that's going to frame the question. Frame determines the attitudes that govern the response. And we know that framing in the media was giving a context for a story which can affect opinions through socialization, right? So you can see how by defining the term from the word bank, we were able to then use it in this multiple choice question as well. So that's one great study tip for y'all. And of course, another study tip is to use the study guide and the book and our lecture materials. Now, most of these terms will be in Crutz's glossary, so you'll see that key term hit when you search them. Some are not. If they are not, that's a good idea to go and check the lecture materials for the class because they're probably in those if they're not a key term in Crutz. So, for example, I believe the term agency loss does not show up in Crutz, but it does show up in our lecture materials quite a bit, especially when we talk about things like delegation and elections. It comes up before the midterm as well, but certainly comes up in the context of delegating our power to our elected officials through our elections. One last thing I wanted to draw your attention to is this exam review slides and videos. If we were an in-person or synchronous class, I would do, oops, apologies, an exam review session. And I would use these slides and talk through them. So what I've done is I've filmed that. Now you'll notice these videos in our YouTube playlist here are longer than a standard exam review session. What I've really tried to do is anticipate questions that you might have. So tried to sort of imagine every possible question I ever got during an in-person exam review session and address it here. So these are perhaps a little more comprehensive than we would have gotten in person to account for the fact that we are not, in fact, in person. So this is all there for you. I know it's not quite the same as a live review, but I don't like doing live reviews in an asynchronous class because inevitably people won't be able to attend since we don't have a regular class meeting time, and that will be unfair to some students. So we have this instead. That said, if you want to talk to me live about the exam, you are welcome to. I have office hours. You can book them on Calendly, or of course, you can email me and set up a time outside of my scheduled office hours. So those are some of our key exam review materials and some critical information about the exam. Encourage you to use all these materials and to engage with each other on that Q&A board, as well as to email me, come to my office hours, or ask me through that Q&A board any questions you might have.